This is our homily for Sunday, June 22nd, the feast of Corpus Christi. A young man called his mother and announced excitedly that he had just met the woman of his dreams. Now what should he do? His mother had an idea. Why don't you send her flowers and on the car invite her to your apartment for a home-cooked meal? He thought this was a great strategy and arranged the date for a week later. His mother called the day after the big date to see how things had gone. The evening was a disaster, he moaned. Why? Asked the mother. Didn't she come over? Oh, yes, said the boy. She came over, but she refused to cook. We all know food is important. Our very life depends on food. Our culture puts more and more emphasis on eating healthily. Well, the best food and drink we can get is our spiritual food and drink, the body and blood of Christ. Belief that Christ is truly present in the bread and wine, that the bread and wine really become his body and blood, is one of the key identifying elements of the Catholic Church, as opposed to most other Christian denominations. Does it strike you as odd that our gospel reading is not about the institution of the Eucharist? Why would it be about the multiplication of the loaves? Well, the multiplication of the loaves was obviously very important to the early church. It's one of the few passages that's in all four Gospels. Even the institution of the Eucharist isn't in all four. Here's a little background. From the earliest days, they were celebrating the Eucharist in memory of Jesus. We see that in the reading from Paul. John wrote the last Gospel. He doesn't have the institution of the Eucharist because it wasn't necessary. It was already common practice in the communities. He has the washing of the feet to remind them and us that the Eucharist is food to help us have the strength to wash each other's feet. Perhaps those early communities were focusing very much on the Eucharist and forgetting the commandment of love. So John was reminding them what Jesus says, as I have done for you, you must also do for others. For the same reason, I think today's recounting of the multiplication of the loaves is a perfect gospel for the feast of Corpus Christi. It reminds us that Jesus didn't give us his body and blood just to be adored, but to feed and strengthen us, to go out and serve others. Look at the gospel stories. The disciples see a problem. There's lots of people and no food. They want the problem to go away. So they tell Jesus, send these people away. Jesus tells them to do it themselves. That is, give food to the crowd. They object. We only have 5 loaves. So Jesus takes the little they have and makes it enough for all people. And then Jesus gives it back to them so they could distribute it to the others. That, my friends, is the lesson for us. Jesus wants us to make available to him the little that we have and are, and he will make it enough for all. Sometimes we give ourselves a pass by saying we have nothing to offer, or we're just one small person, and so on. This reading reminds us that the Eucharist is not there simply to be adored. It's there to feed us, to give us strength so that we can make our little available to Jesus, and he will do the rest. So the reflection I invite us to this week. In the offertory procession, we bring up the bread and wine, are small gifts that will become the body and blood of Christ. This bread and wine, now the body and blood of Christ, is given back to us as food and drink to strengthen us in living a life of service. How intentional am I about receiving the body and blood of Jesus? Is it just a habit, or am I letting it help me grow into being a better servant to others, especially those most in need? And how can I do better? God bless.